Hey everybody, it's Alex, and it's Friday, December something, but it's Friday, which is great. And I hope that, unlike me, you don't have to work tomorrow, because the story is I still don't know what Crane is, because I was supposed to get it today, and then I literally got to site as the guy was calling my office to cancel me. I mean, cancel the job, not cancel, like, me personally. So I still don't know, but instead they rescheduled me for tomorrow. So that's great. And I get to be there at 7 a.m. So if the job gets canceled again, I'm going to be really mad. But, end of the week for most people. I'm sorry, I'm just super fucking tired, and the idea of getting up that early tomorrow is just actually like actively making me more tired, like it's sucking out my will to live. So instead, let me talk about a thing that I'm mad about. So, the Washington Post, to which I do have a subscription, because they got me with the damn democracy dies in darkness motto. Like, I hope the marketing person who came up with that one got a promotion out of it and a raise. But they published this article today, the headline of which is, "That's the Model. Republican Cory Gardner stands up to President Trump." I will link to this absolute piece of garbage in the notes, and you notice I had to write it down on a sticky note so I could be accurately angry. And I tweeted furiously about this earlier today because, if nothing else, it's really obvious that whoever wrote this article did not fucking bother to talk to anyone who lives in Colorado. Because if nothing else, of the 100 senators, Cory is the 8th most disliked by his constituents, which should tell you something. He's right up there with Orrin Hatch, who doesn't read his own home newspaper. But anyway, so, and it's also really obvious that, like, this reporter went through all of Cory's stuff, desperately searching for things that would somehow fit this narrative that they're trying to build about him standing up to the president, because of course that's the model. That's like a quote from one of the other Republicans being like, "Oh, this is how we're gonna do it. This is how we're gonna, like, totally stand up to President Trump," when they, like, never will fucking do that in their lives. But so that is upsetting of itself, because it's obviously this false narrative that's trying to be built. And I mean, we see this every time a Republican says something that sounds like they have, like, this much of a spine. You suddenly get all these pandering articles that are like, "Oh my god, this person's, like, saying mean things about Trump and standing up to him," and then totally goes and votes for the thing anyway. But, I'm just, so this is, like, not a new thing, but I'm just particularly offended because Cory Gardner is Colorado's problem, and we're stuck with him for another 2 years, because we don't get to vote on his ass until 2020, and hopefully he will be gone. But the other thing that's just really, really pissing me off about this... Okay, well, no, there's several things. So first off, there's the, it's obviously trying to fit a narrative, and particularly because they kept being like, "Oh, well, Cory Gardner said this that was negative about the president," and then don't follow up with him literally then taking no action. He just says shit. He occasionally talks a good game on Twitter and then does nothing to back it up. So they were like, "Oh, well, he might be supporting the Dreamers," and I'm like, I'll believe it when I fucking see it, because it's not gonna happen, because Cory Gardner has no spine. And if this reporter had bothered to talk to even a single person in Colorado who has desperately been trying to get him to do his fucking job representing us, they would know this. Like, let's just talk about my ongoing love affair with Cory Gardner's voicemail, because that's all I ever get to fucking talk to. I mean, actually, like, I occasionally get a real person in his office, and it's such a rare occasion that I always scream about it on Twitter when it happens. And then there's the whole, like, he has been fleeing from us so hard for the last year that he won't have a town hall, like an in-person town hall. He's had plenty of telephone ones because they're easier to control, and no one can hear us yelling at our muted telephones. But he's like the couple of times he's deigned to have any kind of in-person town hall, it's been like with 24 hours of notice, and it's in the middle of the fucking day in like BFE Colorado, which tells you a whole lot. So I mean, like, the entire them trying to write a puff piece about him to begin with is just so infuriating. And then the thing that's really making me mad is the absolute lack of context that is in this article. And like, you know, I already mentioned, like, part of it is they went and they tried to find all this stuff that he said, and then he hasn't fucking done anything about it, and they just don't ever mention that. But so they're completely missing out on the entire lead up to this, which is when he bothers to talk a good game, he doesn't follow through. So hailing this as some kind of like Cory Gardner grew a spine and this is the course the Republicans are going to take is just like devoid of any recent history. And that bothers me because it's something that has just been endemic to so much reporting, particularly in the last year, because I don't know if it's just that the reporters are, like, the papers are so understaffed, or the reporters are so desperate to believe that it's not as awful as it is, or they're trying to find a narrative of any kind of, like, reasonableness for the Republicans, but it's just like, you know, every time they fucking report about the president lying, and I know there are a lot of people that, like, bitch about how reporters don't actually say lying, and that actually I can understand, because when you say that someone is lying, you are implying a certain level of personal intent, whereas if you just say, he said a thing that wasn't true, you can, it is literally provable that he both said a thing and that it wasn't true, and you're not implying intent in any way that, say, somebody could sue you over. So, like, that I totally understand, but, like, every time there's, like, all this untrue bullshit that gets said, all these lies, I can say that because I'm not that worried about getting sued because I'm not a major newspaper and nobody gives a shit what I say. But anyway, there's like a complete lack of context of, oh, and here are the myriad of other times he has said a thing that isn't true. So there is obviously a pattern of behavior developed that means you cannot fucking trust anything this asshole says. And yeah, like, okay, in a factual piece, you couldn't actually have the, and therefore you cannot trust a thing this asshole says part because that's more editorial. But it is not counterfactual to say, here is the context that has led up to this point where he has said yet another untrue thing. Like, here are all of the other times that we've counted things that he's said are untrue. And there is not nearly enough of that. There's not nearly enough of, you know, a Republican said a thing, and then here are all the other times they've said a thing and not done anything. And it really is just like that fucking Charlie Brown cartoon where it's Lucy with the football, and every time Charlie Brown goes up to it and is like, oh, maybe this time it'll be different. And it's never different because apparently Charlie Brown lives in a world where context doesn't exist and he's unable to recognize patterns. And you know, our power as creatures, you know, as living beings, is that we are pattern recognizing animals, and sometimes that's bad because that's where, you know, like a lot of conspiracy theory thinking comes in, but it's also like a really important skill, and that's a lot of basis on, you know, where we start knowing where to head with science and stuff like that. And I mean, you know, talking about science, God, you would get like pilloried if you were doing research and did not have a robust background understanding of everything that had happened before that had led up to what you are doing. That's like the basic requirements. So it makes me extra furious when there's just like this complete lack of understanding of recent history or even further back history that has led us to this point. Like this willful thing like, holy shit, the days have started getting longer and the sun has returned. I had no idea that was coming. You know, that's what it feels like sometimes, and it's just really, really frustrating. And it's, you know, endemic with a lot of modern society, and, you know, I think some of it is like the way, you know, history is taught in this really like narrative of progress bullshit thing, rather than, you know, say like, oh, you know, the kind of like the cycling of racism where there's like progress and then pushback and, you know, all of that, so that now where we're at, there everyone is like, oh, I don't understand what's happening. This kind of thing's never happened before. Well, yeah, it fucking has. you need to recognize what has occurred in the past so that you can contextualize what's happening now and see the pattern of it. And apparently that's what I felt like ranting about. And it's just like this thing with Cory Gardner, like, oh, he's going to stand up to Trump. Well, first off, he's not really standing up to Trump, by the way. He's standing up to Jeff Sessions, who I know is Trump's little evil Keebler elf. But there is a little bit of a distinction there, because it's not like Trump came out there and was like, fuck marijuana. I want to even say, obviously he'll say whatever the fuck he wants to say, and it'll change in 5 minutes. But I even remember, like, when he was campaigning, he was, like, fine with it. Jeff Sessions has, like, some kind of reefer madness thing going. But then, so, like, there's that. So it's not like this has been, like, a giant administrative push. It's just been, like, Jeff Sessions having his fucking obsession. And then there's also this lack of context where, like, Cory Gardner has not listened to any fucking thing his constituents have wanted over the last year, but this is where he's drawing the line, and it's pretty obvious that, I'd be curious to know how much money he gets in donations from the marijuana industry, but also, like, even the non-liberals in Colorado understand that the marijuana industry brings in an incredible amount of money, both just by itself and as a tourist thing. And the money the industry brings in is going to schools directly. And our schools desperately need money because we're still getting fucked in the butt by the Tabor Amendment that we've been stuck with and can't get rid of. And by the way, if anyone ever tries to sell your state a Tabor Amendment, a taxpayer's bill of rights where the government isn't allowed to raise taxes without the voters saying so, and the state revenue gets ratcheted down, like, set it on fire, because it will fuck your state forever. But anyway, that's, like, how we're basically making up a lot of shortfalls for the school system right now. So, I mean, I think just on a basic self-preservation level, Cory Gardner knows that if this happens on his watch, if he's lucky, he's only going to get burnt in effigy and lose his job. If he's unlucky, it won't be an effigy. So it's this really just disingenuous thing, like, this is somehow him growing a spine. It's him having, like, enough of a survival instinct to know that this is the really bad line that he shouldn't cross. But when you take it in the pattern of behavior, like, I will be surprised if he actually fucking does anything. And then if he does do anything, then, of course, he's going to get lauded as some kind of, like, great Republican that stands up to the president. And he's never going to fucking stand up to the president again, because he's just, like, protecting the marijuana industry in Colorado. And that is, like, literally the most basic thing anyone can do. Like, no one is surprised that Senator Bennett's doing that. So it's just, I'm so mad about this. And I'm just so mad about, like, this, like, apparent inability to remember the recent past or admit to it or look at it, especially when it's being connected to politics. And I mean, there's a lot of places where it's a problem, but in particular, this is just really making me mad. And apparently that's my rant for today. So, I will talk to you later. I don't know if I'm going to vlog tomorrow because hopefully the job is just going to be super short and I'll probably come home and go back to bed. But have a great weekend, and I hope you're not working, unlike me, and I will talk to you later.